of the things that I have wanted to kind of get my opinion out on, it was different people that I believe their opinions of how we should think or what we should have in our government uh, don't hold up when questioned properly. And I think that Warren Smith is this YouTuber that kind of goes ahead and he kind of like breaks down the ideas. I'm honestly not someone that's like super well uh like versed in all the information, so I like to give my opinions of like a regular person on the side, and that's what I just enjoy doing. Now let me see if I can switch this up a little bit. Here we go. Here, so I really enjoy this guy, so I will be adding some commentary onto his video, but I think he does a phenomenal job.
Renowned biologist alive today sits down with David Pakman, of all people, and it's spectacular. He's absolutely outmatched here. He quickly realizes it.
You've said many things over the last 2 years related to the discussion about.
So, just in case you don't know who Richard Dawkins is, this is what I'm gonna say. I think that he basically is the one that came up with like the theory of evolution. He's kind of helped develop that in terms of how species evolve due to natural selection or like environmental factors and stuff. So he's very much a scientist, like well renowned. I think he wrote the theory of evolution or something like that. Let me see the books that he wrote specifically. Richard Dawkins. Yeah, he's a British evolutionary biologist and zoologist. He wrote The Selfish Gene. And so basically his whole study of work is basically on evolution, right?
Gender and transgender and gender identity, etc., some of which you've said that I agree with, and some of which you've said that maybe I agree with a little less.
He can't point to a single thing that Dawkins is getting wrong. Yet at the beginning, he claims that there are things that Dawkins says that he disagrees with.
Can we all agree that gender is expressed on a spectrum? And what I found interesting about Neil deGrasse Tyson saying this is that it's less a conversation about biology.
He begins by referencing Neil deGrasse Tyson saying people express their gender to different degrees.
Okay. So I think that there is something to that in terms of people that do express their gender in a certain way. But if that's like how people choose, right? Everybody has their own personal opinion on how they decide to express themselves. That doesn't change the fact of whether you are male or female in any way, shape, or form. That's just a biological fact. That is what a woman is. That is what a man is, and it causes that. But that doesn't just because that is what you are doesn't force you to act any one specific sort of way, right?
Agrees. Yes, some people will tend to wear dresses more. Some will prefer pants. But what does that have to do with anything?
But it is a question about what I think is an undeniable reality about the world, which is, at minimum, the expression of gender is on a spectrum, and that maybe that can serve as a starting point for some of these discussions.
Because they need that to be the starting point. But what that's
again, it isn't about the expression of gender. It's about your self-expression. That is what you decide to express on your own. Whether you want to express yourself to be more feminine or more masculine, that is up to you. But that doesn't change the fact that you're either male or female. It is just a way that you choose to express yourself.
Actually doing is shifting the frame away from biology, but you're talking to Richard Dawkins.
Would you agree with that, which seems to me like an uncontroversial statement, or is that a problematic statement to you?
People express themselves differently. How could that possibly be controversial or problematic? The problem is that you are using that to then make claims that have nothing to do with just expression of fashion. So Richard Dawkins sees right through this.
I'm a biologist, and what I really object to is the subversion of language. Talking about a woman's penis, for example. I mean, that is just playing around, playing fast and loose with the English language.
Right. Like, for example, you can choose to express yourself to be more feline or or canine, or for example, like people that are furries or whatever, that doesn't make them furries. That doesn't make them a cat. That doesn't make them a dog. It just is how they choose to express themselves. Now, whether that's right or wrong is not up for me to say. People can choose to do whatever they want, but that doesn't change. That doesn't change their biology, and that's what fundamentally we're talking about when you're talking about female, male, man, or woman.
And I'm a biologist who needs to talk about sex and the difference between male and female, which is absolutely clear. It's one of the very few binaries we actually have in biology.
This seems to be one, if not one of the only actual binaries in existence.
Race is not a binary. Race is a genuine continuum, obviously, because of all hybridization and so on. Almost everything else you can think of is a continuum: short versus tall, fat versus thin. All those things are a continuum. Sex is the one thing which actually is a binary. And I think that messing around with the English language, and well, any language for that matter, but I happen to speak English, is a subversion, a perversion of clarity of thought, clarity of speech for political ends.
Now, David Pakman cannot contend with this, so he does the same move I see over and over again. Yes, well, no progressives are claiming that that biology can change. And
yeah, and I think most of my progressive colleagues would agree that the biological circumstances undeniably are men, women, some percentage born intersex, and that's
tiny percentage.
Yes, no, certainly.
Percentage.
No need to exaggerate what the percentage is.
No.
The size of this percentage is shocking when you actually look at it, and Dawkins gets into this. If you were to actually look at the frequency represented in data and represent that visually, it would look like the twin towers for male, female, and then intersex would be, as he describes, an anthill in comparison to those, just to give you a visual analogy.
Is it also in your mind
So yeah, this is like what a large majority of like super liberal, super progressive people will say, is that there are this intersex group of people, and that's why we should change society so that everybody is included, right? But it's such a small minority that when you change society to conform to this small minority, it causes a larger issue where it's just like, okay, so now do we have to create an extra bathroom? So then now how, like, what do we have? We have to create, like, we have to do a huge change in the societal norm just to appeal to this tiny minority of people. And that doesn't even mean that that's what they want either. It's just what this extremist group of liberals or this really radical group wants to do, just to, make this small minority feel good. And not even them, like, honestly, themselves more than anything, just to make themselves feel well.
Problem to separate biological sex and gender expression? Do you have an issue? Language aside, is that a concern to you?
So is the question, is it wrong to conflate the two?
Yeah, I didn't even understand
Is it also, in your mind, a problem to separate biological sex and gender expression? Do you have an issue? Language aside, is that a concern to you?
So is the question, is it wrong to conflate the two? Well, yes. These are trap questions that Dawkins...
Right. And gender expression, it's extremely wrong to conflate the two. Just like I wouldn't want a man dressed as a woman to be in a bathroom with my daughter. I wouldn't, like, it's very obvious. I don't want them to be confused. I want a man to go to the men's restroom. I want a woman to go to the women's restroom, and they should not be mixed up just because of the way that someone decided to dress that day. Like, absolutely not.
Does not even try to engage with them. He just articulates what he thinks is most important.
I am not particularly bothered if somebody wants to present themselves as the opposite of the sex that they are. I do object if they insist that other people recognize that. And I mean, I support Jordan Peterson in this, if nothing else, that he objects to the Canadian government making it mandatory that he should call people by a pronoun like they when they are, I mean, he's prepared to do that as a matter of courtesy, but not as a matter of compulsion. And I thoroughly support him on that.
What do you think the next move is going to be? Well, I haven't seen any evidence of anyone actually being put in prison for pronouns.
Okay, so in the British government, he was talking about Jordan Peterson, which is in Canada, and the Canadian government has a huge support towards gays, transgenders, lesbian, the LGBTQ community, absolutely. And so they created a movement where they have made it part of the law to call people by what they want to be called, and you actively choosing to not do that out of your own personal belief system or out of what you decide to do is now considered like hate speech, and you can be arrested for that. In Britain, they are doing the same thing, and I haven't really looked into the British politics, but I know that if, for example, there was a woman recently who she was violently beaten by her husband, and she called him gay, and she was arrested for calling him gay because that word is deemed as a as a slur against the gay community, and so she was imprisoned as a result of that. And so David Pakman coming here and saying, "Oh, I don't know anything that it could have happened or that has happened in the world where people are getting imprisoned for doing this," that's complete BS. It's happening all over the world.
This denial that there actually is a push to mandate the use of language.
You know, I don't have the bill in front of me, but when I looked at it 18 months ago, I struggled to find anywhere where he talks about threat of jail if you use the wrong pronoun. I did not find that, but since I don't have it in front of me, maybe we'll table those particulars.
Moving in that direction.
So this is another thing I noticed that David Pakman does is that because I've watched a few things of him before, is that I don't have the information in front of me, and so because of that, we can't talk about this right now, and so we'll figure this out later once we have that information. But then he'll go on to make arguments of like, also, why is it bad? And then, or like he'll make his own arguments, and then at the end of the day, you can just say the exact same thing. Well, you don't have the data to back that in front of me. I don't have the data to argue against that. Why don't we just talk about this later? When you can just make your own rational opinions off of like the pieces of information you do have, right?
At all should be flat out enough concern. And I would dispute what David Pakman is saying here. I think we can look in the UK where Richard Dawkins lives and see people being arrested for hate speech.
But that being said, what about, for example, things like arresting doctors who provide certain gender affirming care, as it's called? Maybe you have an issue with the term or not, but
Dawkins turns the table on Pakman and uses his own technique against them.
What about the arresting of doctors, for example? Does that not start to bite a little bit to...
Which doctors have doctors been arrested for that?
No, these are bills that have been proposed in the United States. It has not happened, to my knowledge, fortunately.
So when it comes to Jordan Peterson and mandated speech...
Yeah. See, this is just as I said earlier. Wow.
Well, we haven't seen anyone actually be arrested. When it comes to doctors performing surgeries, well, no, we haven't seen anyone being arrested yet. But I've seen legislation. Now it aligns with what Pakman wants. So now it's okay.
Children or adults?
We've seen both in different states.
The expression on Dawkins' face here, he can see right through this guy.
Well, I would have strong objection to doctors injecting minors, children, or performing surgery on them to change their sex.
And as far as adults, you have no issue?
Well, I think if they've thought about it properly, like Jan Morris, for example, who I read years.
Look, at a certain point, when you're an adult, you have to take responsibility for what you do. Adults can get all sorts of illegal drugs. They can inject it into themselves. Obviously, we arrest the drug traffickers or the drug suppliers, and we try to. But at the end of the day, when you're an adult, you should be able to decide for yourself what you do. And if they want to chop off their limbs, if they want to do whatever kind of surgery they want to do, at a certain point, you have to leave them to make that decision for themselves. But as for children, we don't let them get tattoos. We don't let them vote. because they just don't know enough. And as adults, that's what we restrict them to, so that when later on, when they become more informed and are able to make better decisions for themselves, and they have that information, then they'll be able to make an informed decision. But yeah, we shouldn't allow doctors to be able to do this sex change. We'll infuse them with chemicals that will do permanent damage to their bodies long term.
First of trans people that I read and greatly respected her struggle that she went through in order to change sex from male to female. She really, really put herself through it, and clearly sincere, clearly suffered from gender dysphoria, no doubt about that. And I take my hat off to her and to the doctors who helped her. But I fear that what we're seeing now is a fashion, a craze, a mimetic epidemic.
And Dawkins was the originator of the concept of the meme,
which is spreading like an epidemic of measles or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're not going to resolve this today.
David Pakman cannot contend with this, even when he has Dawkins sitting across from him.
But unfortunately, do you agree that this has become a scapegoated group?
What I see is that there's in effect a war going on between gay people and trans people, or at least not trans people themselves, but trans activists. So I'm not sure that I follow that. I think that I have great sympathy and great respect for gay people, and I worry about the bullying that goes on, not by trans people themselves necessarily, but by some of the activists. And there was somebody in Britain, I think just a couple of days ago, who stood up and made a speech. It was actually a trans person, a man turned woman, who said, if you see a TERF, punch her in the fucking face.
Oh, so in other words, you, if I understand correctly, you have some concerns about LGBT and whether or not trans really is part of the LGB movement or something different.
How would you get that response from what he just said?
Well, I think there's been a recent court case in Britain where an LGB lobby was fighting against a T lobby. So
I'm not familiar with that case, but I'm aware of that disagreement, certainly. So that is a concern to you.
Yes.
Interesting.
He offers no response. He can't respond. All he can do is end the interview.
Oh, dang. Oh, my bad. Let me...
All right, Richard Dawkins, there's no appropriate time to cut a conversation, but let's cut it now because we are at the end of our time.
I've been going down this Richard Dawkins rabbit hole. He just bought The Selfish Gene and I'm reading it. I find him fascinating, and this is connecting to other ideas.
Yep, but there it is. And I think at the end of the day, we should allow adults to make decisions for themselves and keep that out of the hands of children. But I do think that it's very clear it's binary, just as Richard Dawkins said. There's male and female, and then there's the way that you decide to express yourself, right? It's clear cut, crystal. I hope you guys have a good one.